Well, I always gotta be honest. What's up, guys? I'm Pencil here, and here to do a breakdown and discussion on how well the beast of the Zenin, she who wiped the entire Zenin clan off the face of the earth, the heavenly restricted ghost, Maki Zenin, did against the almighty, the only too powerful, the greatest, the juiciest, the most grundiliumptious, glorious king of curses, Ryomen Sukuna. And how well she did. So, let's not waste any more time, and let's hop right into it. Editing me. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do have into have it on me, and keep it on me at all times. And another fun fact. If you didn't know, I'm something of a Maki meat muncher myself, a toju toe taster, if you will, a heavenly restriction hype beast, if you will. Naturally. If you've heard any of my arguments, any of my scaling, as of recent, I'll admit, because you go like a year and a half in the past, I was actually pretty against it. But now I've been shifted, my eyes have been open, so I've been hyping and glazing these two. But especially Maki, for a while now. She's one of my favorite characters. I am fully biased. I am fully 100 million, billion, duodecillion% biased. So I want you to put this in your dome piece. Put this in your dome piece, and remember this when I say her performance was mid. Because let's be honest. It kind of had to be mid, but at the same time, that's me huffing straight copium. So let's not waste any more time, and let's actually hop right into it. So obviously, Maki's performance begins right at the end of chapter 251 after Yudokotsu gets bisected by Ryomen Sukuna, and she appears with backshots. Now, here's my thing, right? This technically counts, but I don't really want to give her too much credit for it. Because this begins a theme with all the damage that Maki does to Sukuna, with like 3 exceptions, if not 2, that we're going to cover in a little bit. And it's the fact that it's all sneak. It is nothing but sneak merchant. And you know, it's not bad, right? And once again, when we're talking about an overall performance against the King of Curses, sneaking him still counts as damage. And honestly, the type of damage she does is very, very important for while it lasts. I mean, does it last too long? A pretty decent chunk, but still, not too, but still, I want y'all to focus on this. All of her damage starts and kind of ends with a sneak. But with that being the case, we open up and we see Maki sneak Ryomen Sukuna. She very specifically stabs him through his chest in order to remove his heart from him. And that allows the surprise attack against an opponent certain of victory. Now, I should have known something was up the moment I saw Ryomen Sukuna smile at her for doing this, while she did not have a smile on her face, but that's the first thing. This is huge relative to this Sukuna. I'd say so far, outside of the removal of his tongue and the removal of one of his arms, this is the biggest thing, if only for the fact that he now needs to keep diverting cursed energy in order to make sure that his heart is pumping. Ultimately, his RCT had dropped off massively by this point. Like, you can definitely tell by how long it takes him to regenerate this one arm, which was removed by Yudokotsu and not necessarily anybody else. Yeah, he still is in duress, but at the same time, this is like the first bit of big, hefty, legal, permanent damage outside of that arm. But honestly, though, now that I think about it, I'm going to sit back and immediately take back that statement. No, not really. Even as important as the heart is, it didn't necessarily take anything away from Sukuna. So I'm actually going to have to drop points off for this too. Mainly because she could have done so much more. Like, this is going to be half analysis, half hypotheticals. She could have taken another arm. And she will do later. Or she could have taken a leg. She could have taken so many other things. She took the heart. And honestly, on a macro scale, when I'm trying to think about the overall damage in the Sukuna and why I praise Yudokotsu so much, that didn't really do much. As you'll see, because we hop right into chapter 252, continuing right after this initial encounter. And yeah, is it glorious to see Maki give Sukuna backshots? Absolutely! It's scrumdiddlyumptious. But notably, she can't even complete the blade swing. Like, Sukuna completely dodges off the sword before she can upswing it. And notably, she doesn't just go to upswing it. She, like, grabs the bottom of the blade, presumably the flat end of it, because the Halidachi wants to cut through her hand, and just straight goes up, but Sukuna flies off it. And note, he is admittedly splurting from flying off the blade, but that doesn't mean much considering that damage is ultimately minimal. And that's a theme that we're going to follow. While someone like Yudokotsu did major damage, and someone like Yuji Todori, who we'll cover in his own video, kind of really didn't do major damage in the grand scheme of things, but did major damage in a different kind of way, Maki Zenin gets this heart stab. And we see Ryomen Sukuna realize something.
Darn that possessed brat. He burst little maid on purpose, probably to signal his allies outside. They planned to use the barrier rupturing to distract me when I was certain of victory, so the woman with heavenly restriction could strike. It must be possible to pass through an ordinary barrier if you have no cursed energy. They must have planted the cursed tool ahead of time. This wound is healing slower than the others.
So, this is Maki's claim to fame, essentially. By wielding Soul Split Katana, we find out when someone who can observe the soul wields Split Soul Katana, reverse curse technique doesn't usually heal the wound. Repairing the soul's shape requires comprehending of the soul's contours. 2 souls inhabit Sukuna's body, so he was aware of the contours of his own soul, much like with Yuji Itadori, but he couldn't perfectly adapt to reverse curse technique functioning differently than usual while suffering the after effects of his fight against Satoru Gojo. So, essentially, this only matters because of previous damage. I'm saying that whole, like, legitimately, this directly implies that if Sukuna were in a better physical state, then all of Maki's attacks really wouldn't matter. It's just the fact that now he kind of can't do it as well because of the after effects of the Satoru Gojo battle. So, like, sure, that's the case for a lot of our casting crew. The only reason they have any chance at all is because of the after effects of the Satoru Gojo battle. But considering this is one of Maki's only points of major damage on Sukuna, and major goes in heavy quotation marks, it doesn't really work out all too well. But of course, we're not just ranking Maki on her physical performance in terms of doing damage to Sukuna. If we were just doing that, then other characters would have way less points. I'm looking at you, Yuji. But that aside, we also have to talk about their general performance when it comes to their combat efficacy against Sukuna. As we see that while Yuji Todori's moved from the battle slightly, Maki and Sukuna start to run around and have a good time. Now, while I can get all on my high horse and say that Maki's damage to Sukuna is kind of booty cheeks, I can sit here and tell you that her defensive performance against Sukuna is actually really, really impressive. Notably, she basically, let me think. I'm going through and reviewing it right now. I reviewed it before I started recording. But I'm trying to think how many times she actually gets tagged by dismantles. And I think it's like once? Unless I'm mistaken, I think it's once. Technically, it is a twofer. It's like it's an X shape in an upcoming chapter. But notably, defensively, she does really, really well. She's in mid-air here, landing down, and Sukuna's like, here, let me slash at you. But she dodges it perfectly by presumably kicking off the air here, and then really sticking off the pole, and then bouncing down in order to get down into Sukuna's range. She swings, but once again, Sukuna shows complete. I'm gonna straight up say it. He shows complete superiority to her. I'm not even gonna sit here and cap to you. And once upon a time, we'll just sit here, lie to you, and be like, you know, she kind of goes crazy. But ultimately, Sukuna, while having to heal his heart and missing a whole arm, ignore the fact that it's drawn right here and that arm is missing. But we see she lunges in with the blade, swings, whiffs, Sukuna grabs the blade upon the landing and goes to yank her around. And admittedly, once again, her physical strength is rather impressive. The only characters to actually genuinely throw Sukuna around a little bit is Kusakabe when using auto-targeting, Maki Zenin when specifically using his grip on Soul Split Katana and a later event that we're going to cover, and Rika. And Yuji. Yuji also does it later when he knocks Sukuna through an entire building and also black flashes him through a building. But still, with general physical strength, when Sukuna's trying to outpower her using his massive beefy build, she simply twists the blade and throws him. And very specifically does throw him quite a decent bit up against the wall. Now, this is impressive, but once again, this isn't necessarily damage. And even worse, he's grabbing the Soul Split Katana. Now, naturally, we know he's specifically grabbing Soul Split Katana using his technique known as Shrine and using the tiny blades in order to grip it, so he doesn't accidentally cut himself on Soul Split Katana. But still, the fact that Maki's only aimed to throw him and not necessarily do any damage to him in this interaction after he explicitly weaved her and then grabbed her weapon, but still, physically, it is rather impressive. Like I said, only 4 of the characters do it. One of them the strongest character in the entire series. The other, our main character, till he can off multiple black flashes after awakening. And the third, Kusakabe. Why Kusakabe? I mean, like, I get it, domain auto-targeting. I'm going to talk about Kusakabe's performance against Sukuna in its own video. Because that's actually kind of crazy. Like, he actually does number. But still, that being the case, we see Maki grab, twist, and yeet that boy. And of course, Ryomen Sukuna's like, okay, and proceeds to use cleave on the building in order to create a physical, I want to call it a smoke screen, but like it's half smoke, half rocks. And they all come towards Maki. Now, Maki, I'm not sure, once again, this will be more clear when it's animated. I'm not sure if she's just dodging and weaving throughout the debris or slicing them apart. I'm pretty sure she's just dodging and weaving. But of course, Sukuna starts hitting that. And hits the paired falling stars. And launches something. Now, there is like a consistent debate on whether or not he uses the world cutting slash or not here. Technically, he still is in perfect position too. He still does have 2 of his arms and can arguably direct it with his lower arm, just as he typically uses his lower arms to create the hand sign, as we see against Higuruma, and then guides it with the upper arm. Technically, he still does have all full capacity to use world cutting slash. He just has to use his upper arms to perform the Enma 10 hand sign, and then the lower arms here. But since we don't see it, it's so hard to tell with how tiny Sukuna's drawn here. I'm not going to call it a world slash. I can see why people would want to call it a world slash. Typically, he always trains before world slash. But at the same time, we also have last chapter where it's debatable on whether or not that was a world slash for what was used on Yuta. So once again, I'll just throw it up in the air. It is just a strong dismantle at a bare minimum. A dismantle at full output. Now, of course, this is 50-50 Maki's own combat speed in combination with her precognition and enhanced senses. She was able to hear Sweet! She was able to hear paired falling stars. Notably, it seems like she doesn't really hear the first 2 chants, but on the last one, she's able to hear it and then preemptively duck. Once again, a lot of Maki's feats when it comes to her abilities are based on a combination of her base combat speed and her precognition, or enhanced senses slash precognition. Once again, I sort of just chalk this up to what Maki's speed would generally be, because there are very few characters who will be able to shut down, if any character, who can shut down the precognition? There are people who can outpace it. Like, we'll see Sukuna outpace her precognition eventually. Once again, I sort of just overline that as Maki's overall combat speed. But I know some people don't like that. They would like to say, Maki's base combat speed is relative, and then she only gets a speed buff over everyone else because she can predict all their attacks. So if you think that all the heavy hitters are relative, and it's just that Maki has the precog and the enhanced senses, that's fine. Doesn't necessarily matter. She's the only one to explicitly full-scale dodge a full chain dismantle. If you'll remember, Kashimo Hajime was able to fully dodge a full chain dismantle. Yuta Kosa was able to dodge a full chain dismantle. Though admittedly, I don't blame him too much. He was literally at point-blank range while thinking that his plan was working. And also, he kind of needed to get hit in order to fake Sukuna out for Maki. So you could definitely make an argument that maybe Yuta would have been able to dodge his. But I don't know. It seemed like he seemed so genuinely caught off guard by it. And I highly doubt he wanted to actually be bisected. So like, I wouldn't be too sure about that, but still, Yuji never dodges it. No one else ever dodges a full chain dismantle. Kusakabe actually stops a full chain dismantle from happening because he does not want his cheek slapped that badly. The only other character to dodge full chain dismantles is no one. Like, I legit know. Like, no one does. Everyone else gets hit. Even Satoru Gojo, he doesn't necessarily dodge a chant dismantle, he just dodges a fresh Sukuna dismantle, which is presumably the same as a full chant dismantle, but still, that is a really impressive defensive feat. Once again, we're sort of building on Maki's abilities and her precog and her overall base combat speed, allowing her to do things defensively that a lot of the casting crew couldn't do. She's the first one outside of Yuta, possibly in one previous interaction, to actively dodge a dismantle. Typically, everyone gets hit. They buffered it, they domain amped it, they symbol domained it, but typically, everyone else gets hit except for Yuta in one interaction where he dodges around what looks like a dismantle. It's that net of cleaves that Sukuna does. But once again, it's hard to tell what that really is. Overall, though, that defensive profile is very impressive, and we see that she dodges the full chant world dismantle. Or not, I don't want to call it world dismantle once again, because I can't tell. I really can't tell. No, he's not holding his hands in any way here. So I'm just going to call it a full chant dismantle. But she does dodge it. That's very impressive defensively. Offensively, but defensively, it is impressive. Once again, it is a testament to her base combat speed in combination with her precognition, putting her kind of, at least in my opinion, I know people don't like this, at least in my opinion, a decent chunk above anybody else that we've seen, really. Like, who else is dodging a full chain dismantle? Nobody. Nobody. On the top of my dome. So I'm glazing a little bit. Once again, I'm going to be getting real bad on Maki soon enough, as you'll see. Because we see that ultimately these two realize that, yeah, they're kind of cooked. As Sukuna notes,
she reads my techniques better than other sorcerers, much like when I battled Mahoraga in Shibuya.
Now, this is a contentious translation. It's a hot debate on whether or not Maki can actually see the dismantles, or just seeing everything around the dismantles, or is just precogging them. I don't know. I believe in the TCBs, like, Sukuna literally says she sees it, just like Mahoraga back in Shibuya. But at the same time, he specifically says reads it here? And I'm guessing reading it has to go with the fact that he aims, but he does block her vision here. So, like, I don't know, it's pretty strange, but based on the fact that she ducks and does not try to deflect it or anything, I'm presuming that she just read it. And that's why Sukuna says read here in these translations. And then, of course, we see that Maki just realizes, oh, maybe taking out his heart wasn't the best idea, because it did basically nothing. And notably, we even see Sukuna note, after she says, your heart, can you keep that up while battling me?
And Sukuna says, at the moment, I'm having no trouble at all.
Once again, showing that while the heart is definitely big, it's not necessarily that big. I'd say the removal of an arm, the removal of a leg, especially, the removal of anything more useful than the heart, which we've already seen Sukuna can operate fully fine without, Would have been better, Maki. Would have been better offensively. Maybe he could have removed his tongue, like Yuta did. Or removed his arm, like Yuta did. Or removed his output, like Yuji did. Okay, obviously you can't remove the output. But still, with that being the case, we obviously get to the end of the chapter, and we get a little bit of that juicy, scribbly emphasis Sukuna glaze. But with it being the case, we gotta continue on to chapter 253, where I say part one of Maki just flat out ends, as we see she does hard leap over another dismantle. And this is once again pretty impressive, if only for the fact that this is clearly a more full, possibly another full chant dismantle. And then she seemingly clangs with Sukuna. Now, I do think this once again is an impact of his blades of Shrine contacting her blade in the Soul Split Katana, or the Split Soul Katana. I always call it Soul Split. Technically, it is Split Soul Katana. And notably, the reason I say this is a full chain dismantle is because of the scale of the attack. If you remember, the last time something like this happened, where a whole building was cleaved in half by one of Sukuna's dismantles, was specifically when Sukuna was back at full power, when he was in Manga, back at the fight with Sato de Gojo. All the other casual Sukuna dismantles he's been doing, especially ever since his output was dropped, have been really, really small. Or not necessarily small, but they haven't been nearly as effective to cleave through an entire building. But this one literally takes the whole building down, causing it to fall on top of both of them. So this is just Maki presumably weaving another entire full chain dismantle and then clashing evenly with Sukuna. Now, of course, as the end of last chapter showed, this does not mean that Maki's relative to Sukuna. It means she's faster than his full range attack speeds in combination with her base speed and her precognition, which is good. Once again, like I said, no one else dodges the full chain dismantle. And if you're thinking, what about Miguel? Miguel does not dodge full chain dismantles. In fact, they are double nerfed. They are double nerfed for the fact that Sukuna's output is in the trash, and also the fact of Hakuna Lana, Miguel's curse technique. I've seen people try to glaze Miguel for that, but like, it's cool. He does dance and weave around a whole bunch of them, but like, they aren't full chant and they're extra nerfed. So like, there's that. But with that being the case, Maki does clash and clang. Sukuna does just consistently keep blocking her, though. This is why I say that Maki's overall offensive performance against Sukuna is pretty garbage. And why I call her pretty much the sneak merchant, with two exceptions that I believe are coming up in this very chapter. As the building falls on them, they dodge out of the way for the most part, which is pretty impressive because they do let the building get pretty close, but Maki does weave out of the way entirely. Look at the clean cut on this building. That has to be a full chain dismantle, at least in my opinion. Unless y'all can, I mean, I'm trying to think. What other... No, because by this point, we saw all the dismantles he was using against Yuji and Yuta. Like, they were relatively tiny. He probably needed a full chant for this. Thing is, though, that would just admittedly be pure headcanon based on, like, scaling and previous sizes of dismantles, because we don't see him chant or anything here. And clearly, I wouldn't say this is a world slash either, especially by the way it's drawn. But it does slash that building in half, bring it down on top of them, and Maki once again shows the impressive defensive performance by outright blocking a dismantle that Sukuna hides behind her while she's facing the opposite direction. Once again, though, I would say this is definitely an example of her precognition kicking in, because, like, she can't sense Sukuna. She also can't sense dismantles. So, like, her turning around whole hog here and just, and blocking, that is impressive. But at the same time, she doesn't really get tagged here. This is the first dismantle she gets, quote-unquote, tagged by, but she does block it by putting the arm up and putting the guard up with the blade, and gets sent through an entire building. Once again, it is impressive that she takes no damage from the recoil of this, but still, Sukuna does show his relatively superior speed, as he is here. Look where he is. Look where this man is, on the other side of a car. Hits her. She goes through another building off the recoil, does not fully dodge it, but only blocks it, and then Sukuna's in the building. This is still one of the craziest speed feats Sukuna's ever. I don't know how he does this. Like, genuinely, when I talk about ranking Sukuna's performance in the Shinjuku Showdown, which is going to be like a 2-hour-long video, because obviously it's the entire Shinjuku Showdown. I got to rank everything. I may break it up for my own sanity. I may break it up into, like, Megana, so I can cover the entire Sasuke Gojo fight, and then I may break it up into True Form Sukuna. Golly, that's still gonna be like an hour and a half video. But still, with that being the case, Sukuna moving crazy here, and proceeds to land a hit on Maki. Now, admittedly, this is also kind of another defensive profile feat for Maki, but at the same time, it isn't, specifically because he uses cleave. And I may be like, Pencil Man, isn't cleave like the most broken technique in the series in terms of like Durnag? Like, this one shot, the bulkiest character in the series. What are you talking about? I say it's not necessarily too impressive, because one, we know that the Heavenly Restriction users have a quote-unquote body of steel, a superhuman physical form, but with no cursed energy. And if you remember how Cleave works, Cleave adjusts to you based on your cursed energy. So, like, it's impressive in the sense that she pretty much eats this, and you'll see that she pretty much takes no damage from this when she reappears. Like, she shows back up with no healing necessary and barely any blood drip. Let me see. Does she even have blood on her from getting hit by Cleave? This right here could be argued to be some blood, but at the same time, it could just be, like, an ink stain or whatever. But that's the case. She does take a cleave, but I wouldn't say it's too impressive, because one, it's a nerfed output Sukuna, drastically nerfed output Sukuna who's pumping his heart. Once again, how much that nerfs his output though? But still, and she has zero curse energy. So cleave has nothing to adjust to. It's kind of like, have y'all ever used low kick on a Pokemon that weighs 2 pounds? Like, sure, it's a really strong attack against the right people, but like, Maki's the wrong people. And thusly, when she gets hit by this, well, she does spit out a little juice and doesn't really get bisected from it, which is impressive. At the same time, because it's cleave, and because it can't really auto-adjust to much, and Maki already has such a superior physical form to everybody else, I wouldn't necessarily glaze this offensive feat too much, but it is impressive that she can take a cleave. I would not say, though, that this makes her immune from any sort of dismantles, as we'll see later, nor anyone who could trap her with, like, a whole cleave net or dismantle net if it was more at full power. And the fact that she does get tagged here is pretty embarrassing, but at the same time, it is impressive that she's able to turn around while getting knocked through a building to at least try to defend against Sukuna. Though admittedly, it does fail horrifically. And then, obviously, you know, Kusakabe come in for a little bit, they interfere with the battle, only for not much to happen, and this is one of the few times that Maki does tag Sukuna, but even then, I'd low-key call this sneaking, because he's in the middle of putting all his attention on Kusakabe, and he slams Kusakabe up against the wall, and then Maki comes out of nowhere and full body tackles him. However, as we've seen, tackling Sukuna through buildings doesn't necessarily do much, so she does full body tackle him here, which is once again another impressive physical feat of her knocking Sukuna around, but Yuji will go on to do better than this, and Rika already did better than this by simply lifting up Sukuna and tossing him. So, Maki comes in, and then I was so confused when I initially read it and reviewed this panel, but it's better if you read it like sideways, because essentially what Maki does here, she slams Sukuna into another room. Then she pulls a Sukuna, kind of, sort of, but on a much smaller scale. If you remember how I freaked out over Sukuna somehow getting from this car to all the way over here in this hallway, Maki kind of did a similar thing here, where she boots Sukuna through the wall. Then she proceeds to blitz over to the other side of a pillar, right? So she knocks him through here, causing him to burst through this wall. She somehow, and I say somehow, I fully mean so, she must have ran past Sukuna here, runs over here. This is Sukuna flying towards this pillar. Maki then proceeds to back tackle the pillar with enough force to send the kinetic energy through the pillar that it connects with Sukuna's back in time for when he hits the pillar to beam him into another pillar. And once again, juice or blood is flying out here, but I think that's literally coming from his open arm wound and his gaping chest wound. I wouldn't say this actually does damage to Sukuna. Once again, Maki, she really doesn't do all that much. And then, of course, we get to the ever-famous moment where we get to see that Sukuna is much faster than even his full chain dismantles, as she slices a whole bunch of buildings, or realistically pillars, and goes to knock them towards Sukuna, thinking she's built like that. But unfortunately, she woke up Sukuna's interest. As it says, the king of curses was elated by this reality. And as she kicks these rocks at him, he just blitzes her. Like, blitzes the taste out her mouth. Notably, she does not get cleaved here. Or actually, it's hard to tell if she does get cleaved here. Like, I want to say this is the cleave? Like, is this the dagger? Is this the cleave? Possibly? But it's really hard to tell for me, because, like, why is it only hitting that part of her face? And if so, is that, like, an impressive feat? Honestly, low kizzle, I think this is literally his fingers digging into her skin. I don't think that's a cleave, mainly because of how it's drawn, but that's clearly blood, right? And, like, you can see his hand here, the same hand he grabs her with. That appears to be blood. This appears to be blood leaking from her face. That's clearly some sort of juice. So, like, I think, legitimately, it must have been his pinky or something. Like, his pinky or his middle finger that just, like, straight tore off a chunk of her skin, which is crazy, considering what we'll see her go on to tank. But, with that being the case, she gets knocked out of the building. They're both put in midair. And, ultimately, Sukuna is so excited that he's like, wait a minute! I need you to hold this for me. And he proceeds to lock in so hard. Maki blocks the hit from Sukuna here, which is impressive, especially while he is locked in. He did just blitz her, so the fact that she's able to leap up in reaction speed and very specifically stops using RCT to heal in order to lock in fully, it's impressive that she blocks here. Once again, a solid defensive performance from Maki Zenin. But at the same time, he then proceeds to grab her blade, pull the blade down, and Black Flash her. Now, admittedly, there is something impressive to this, and it's the fact that when he does this, while he is able to show his superior strength by yanking the blade down, she does catch it. It's hard to tell by how it's drawn. I think the anime will do a much better job of this, but she does straight up lower her left arm to catch the Black Flash. She does get pushed through the building and knocked out the fight for a little bit, though. But with that being the case, it is impressive that she's the first one to catch a Sukuna Black Flash, specifically when it's presumed that he's putting at least a decent chunk of his cursed energy into this, because she notices that he stopped using reverse curse technique to heal, and it's just enforcing all his cursed energy into this punch to specifically overwhelm her and prove that Jujutsu is superior. So, Maki does eat a Black Flash. However, I cannot give her too much praise for this outside of the fact that she survives it, for the fact that ultimately, she does get removed from the fight for an entire chapter. She does not show up again until 255. This is chapter 253. So for a whole chapter, she gets removed. Now, obviously, the length of these chapters in this Jujutsu Shonen is super duper big, but considering Kusakabe has an entire moment with Sukuna, has an entire fight, has the whole symbol domain interaction, gets knocked to a building, and then is forced to lay out in order to bait Uyui to come in and get him. It's highly likely that Maki could have gone and got healed or something, or did her own healing off screen. Essentially, she does not immediately hop back into the fight. So, like, I cannot give her too much credit for tanking this Black Flash, and unfortunately, I won't be able to give her too much credit for tanking the next one. However, once again, feeding into the idea that Maki's best attacks come in when she's a sneak merchant, she removes one of Sukuna's arms, fully locking off the world-killing slash from him, as the Yuta arm is still gone, the heart is still gone, the lower belly mouth tongue is still gone, and now that extra arm is gone. Admittedly, she cuts it in, like, the worst spot. Like, why? Why so look? Why not just come here? Why did Maki? Why did you come? But literally, she comes off, takes the arm off, or at least takes, realistically, she takes the forearm off. Maki, you could have cut so much cleaner. But she appears out of nowhere, perfectly fine, mind you. Once again, though, this could easily be chalked up to Uyui coming in and grabbing her while Kusakabe stalled and fought Sukuna. This could be her own healing. Regardless, she did disappear for a chapter, and I'll say I cannot give her too much credit for taking the Black Flash. And even Sukuna, while impressed that even after a hit with Black Flash, I can't glaze her because I don't know how she recovered. Of course, she caught it, so maybe at most she had a broken arm, but still, she could have gone and gotten that healed by Shoko. We never get to mention it. So it's like, it's a battle of headcanons at this point. How do you think Maki recovered from the Black Flash? Do you think it was her own natural healing factor? Or do you think it was something else? Like Shoko healing her? We can't say it was Yuta healing her. And unfortunately, we don't have anyone. So it'd probably be Shoko, but at the same time, we don't know. I genuinely don't know. Even if I chalk it up, though, to Maki's healing factor, clearly it's not viable enough in battle that she could have hopped right back in. Include that Black Flash removed her enough that we didn't just get all of Sukuna versus Kusakabe, but we also got a decent chunk of Sukuna versus Miguel, Sukuna versus LaRue, and even Yuji and Itadori jumping back in, all before Maki comes in specifically to sneak. So, no, I cannot glaze Maki's healing factor. Yes, it is massively inferior to RCT or any other type of healing. It's even inferior to Kashimo's style of healing, where he just forcefully regenerates part of his hand by using the properties of electricity. Yeah, I'd say it's even inferior to that, considering, like, at least Kashimo kept fighting after he lost that darn hand. Maki disappeared. So, like, I can't really glaze. And with that being the case, we see that Sukuna hits that Black Flash in 255, and then Maki sort of joins the battle for the final time. And this is where I'm really gonna have to seriously knock points, because we see that Itadori and Choso are going absolutely buku bonkers on this man, like genuinely locking it. As Maki notes that this is the second Black Flash he's hit, and then while they try to put the pressure on my boy, Maki chases him down, once again attempting to sneak, but unfortunately, since she revealed herself and already did her one bit of damage that she's allowed to do to Sukuna, Sukuna is explicitly keeping an eye on her. She lunges in, once again pushes Sukuna into the wall, but he reacts in time and catches a blade, then proceeds to dismantle everything around them. Presumably I say dismantle, maybe he's touching the wall here, and this is supposed to be the wall, and it's an extension of Cleave, but they slice everything apart. They immediately go into an air battle, only for Sukuna to immediately land another Black Flash on her. Now, admittedly, this one is a bit more impressive, kind of, sort of. Once again, Sukuna's output is dropping. So, like, presumably this punch is nerfed, I would think. Because his control over his body's dropping, so this punch is even more nerfed than the last Black Flash he hit, even though technically his output is recovering because of the previous Black Flash he hit on her, and the Black Flash he hit on LaRue. So once again, I don't know. It is impressive that this doesn't immediately knock her out, because she does not guard this one. Like, unless I'm mistaken, she verbatim does not guard this one after they begin the air hop battle. He simply pulls back, beams her straight through the wall, and then double taps with a dismantle. Once again, this is the only time she does get directly tagged by a dismantle, and she takes damage. But I can't tell how much damage. She gets hit here, and you see blood come out. But truly, she doesn't get bisected. But also, these slashes are still weaker than the full champ ones. And while she mentions the output of his normal slashes is also increasing, it doesn't really matter, because we don't see Maki again. This is it. This is the end of her performance against Sukuna. Getting hit by a Black Flash, allowing him to land a third one, and further recover his output, and then get hit by 2 slashes, and she's done. That's it. So the only real damage that she does to Sukuna is taking out his heart and taking off his arm. Are both of those things important? The heart, not so much, but the arm is pretty important. It does delay him a whole bunch and makes him stub man, but as we see, Sukuna is still really, really dangerous as a stub man, so like, offensively, I kind of gotta give her a performance like a 3. Mainly, I'm drawing everyone to give it a 2 because it's all sneaking. It's all sneaking. And even the other times when she's not sneaking, it's so minor and basically non-existent. Like, cool, you tackled Broski. Cool, you threw Broski around, but didn't do anything. He got back up just fine. He restands. It's like when you're playing fighters, you get someone to knock down, you're playing Majin Buu, or getting played by Majin Buu, because I'm playing Majin Buu. And then you get restood, and then this combo keeps going. That's what Sukuna does. He straight up restands and keeps engaging in the battle, and then proceeds to blitz her. What kind of offensive performance is that? Defensively, it's cool. Once again, only character to dodge multiple dismantles, some of them being full chant, probably 2 of them being full chant, and mainly only the one we see is full chant, the other is pure headcanon on my end. And then she blocks a Black Flash, and then is alive after a Black Flash and dismantle wombo combo. But like, that's it. The only other credit I can really give to her is that she's really the main reason why Sukuna can't open his domain infinitely here. As it's noted that the main reason he put that 99-second time limit on his domain is because if he had just done a closed barrier, Maki would have been fine.
That makes it impossible to notice Maki Zenin, who has no cursed energy.
So, like, he needed to ultimately put the 99-second time limit in order to make sure his domain was as proficient, in order to account for Maki's existence. And she's still around, don't get me wrong, like, she's alive. But, and like, we literally see her. Where is she? Where is she? Like, right here. Like, she's here. She's alive and breathing. Hold on to me one. But that's it. She disappears for the rest of the battle. She doesn't do anything. The next time we see Maki reappear is specifically at the end of 268, after the battle is over. My apologies. That's it. Maki's performance against Sukuna is it's kind of mid. Like, honestly, it's not even top 5. You may be like, whoa, Pencil Man, ain't that kind of... But, like, on the top of my dome piece, who are the top 5 performances? Okay, maybe it is top 5, but, like, process of elimination? Because obviously it's Gojo. Then I'd say Yuta. Then I'd say Yuji. I know the Yuji fans will be like, what? But, like, hear me out. I'm trying. Well, then again, if I just go with Awaken Yuji, then I probably have to put him above Yuji just because of how much crazy stuff Awaken Yuji does. But still, Yuji does get back by a lot. And Yuji's performance is crazy. But I have to kind of dock it for the Goda. But do I count Goda as a separate character? And once again, it kind of like, we have pre-Awaken Yuji and post-Awaken Yuji, and then we have like Goda, and then we have Yuta. And then performances, both are fundamentally different in both time periods. So, obviously those are the top 3. But then who's up? Like, Miguel doesn't do anything. Kusakabe does damage though. Kusakabe does do numbers. He does heal. Sukuna doesn't immediately heal off the numbers. But like performance-wise, he actually does land more hits than Mike. But of course, it's because of the domain auto-targeting. So I guess maybe Maki's number 4. Because like, who else is there? But still, she's 4th. But there's a large gap between 3 and 4. Like, legitimately, I'd give Maki's overall performance like a 5. 10. And that's me highballing the defensive performance. Because overall, she just doesn't really do much. She just... In fact, she kind of makes things worse by being there to get hit. I hate to say it. But like, she forces Sukuna to lock in. And then he hits his first Black Flash and starts restoring his output off of that. He starts to get hit Black Flash fever. Ultimately, if Maki wasn't there to hype him up, then he may have not hit that Black Flash. And then that means there may have been no domain for her to be saved from in the first place. Because she's responsible for 2. Of course, LaRue shows up and gets hit by Black Flash, and Choso gets hit by Black Flash, so they add to it too, and obviously Hana and Toto. But still, Maki starts it. She, if anything, made the situation worse by showing up and getting Sukuna excited. All that for a back shot? When she could have done so much more? Like, legit, remove a leg. Stab him in the head. Do something. Well, obviously not stab him in the head. I'm trying to say Mega. But still, I don't know, bro. Like, and you don't get me wrong. It makes perfect sense. Maki, in terms of, like, narrative importance, is a solid B, maybe low A. S tier is obvious. Like, you know who the S tier important characters are. So it makes sense that both Yuji and Yuta have better performances than her. Especially, like, overall performances. But darn! For how much time and effort she got. She didn't just get the Zenin Clan Massacre. She got all Sakurajima Colony. She got a whole bunch. And while her acknowledgement by Sukuna is a cool character moment, performance-wise, oof, it's pretty darn rough. I literally give it a 5. There are going to be characters who get worse scores than this. You know exactly who those characters are. But, like, there are going to be characters that get worse performances than this. So I'll give her a 5. I'll give her, like, a solid C+. Maybe a B- in terms of her overall performance, just because the offensive profile is so lacking. And while the defensive profile is impressive, it's still not enough, right? We're talking about overall performances, and I think offense is going to be more important than defense, right? Like, kind of like how you can't win a soccer game purely on defense. Like, someone needs to score. Ultimately, Yuta scored way more. Gojo scored way more. Yuji scored way more. So many characters scored way more. Heck, Toto scored way more. And he did purely support. But with that being the case, that's what I think. Please tell what you guys think in the comment section down below. How would you rate Maki's performance against Sukuna? Do you think I'm nuts, crazy, buku bonkers for daring to downplay our glorious heavily restricted beast like this? Do you think I'm underplaying her defensive performance or offensive performance? Do you think she should have more credit, less credit? Please let me know all that and more in the comment section down below. I'd like to thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you hit that little notification bell so you don't miss out on any news that come to the channel. Also, I do happen to have a Patreon below, where you can support me for as low as $1 a month. Now, month, things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. So those perks will include the live reactions to whatever the series I have to review, as we rate issues of all my videos, and if you become a $25 Patreon or a $25 member, you can order whatever video you want. Also, I do have a link to my Ko-Fi in the description down below, or you can drop 5 beans for a short video, 25 beans for a long video, or any beans at all. Any support is always greatly appreciated. Now, I'd like to thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Dag on the Pencil, writing off. Sigh. I want to see how many people stay to the real end for the password of today's video, which is... Who's the poor password for this woman? Gosh darn it. We'll call it Restricted Heavenly. Heavenly restricted backwards. Restricted Heavenly in the comment section down below. But now, I'd like to thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Dag with a Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members: Zara, Greyhound, Eternal Flame, NMA, Real Rare, Red Wolf 4765, Astro, Brandon Payne, G Prosper, and Glacier XZ. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $5 patrons: Midnight Lord 21, Kevin Encarnacion, Sean, Igneo Lind, and A+A. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $7 members, Fine and Austin Wimberly, A Uchiha, along with Yuki Ally. And I'd like to give a big ol' thank you to our $10 members, Robbie Uchiha, Jay Warrior, and AZ Void. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $10 patrons, Overlord Zero, Waki Munoz, and Idemo Kami. And I'd like to give a final, giga, legendary, superhuman, beyond the bounds of reality thank you to our That Guy with a Pencil tier patron, okay, Calvin Elder.